Be me, Zoe, HR director at a tech manufacturing company. 29 years old, worked my way up from HR assistant over 6 years. Finally in a position where I can make real change happen. Sick of watching old boys club run everything while talented women get passed over. Time to level the playing field once and for all. Monday morning, quarterly review meeting with executive team. CEO Bennett asking about our restructuring initiatives. Perfect opportunity to showcase my work. Well, Bennett, I'm proud to report we've successfully transitioned out several senior employees who were blocking progress. Can barely contain my satisfaction as I flip through my notes. Robert from Systems Engineering, 58 years old, resistant to new methodologies. Frank from Network Operations, 62, constantly mansplaining to younger female engineers. David from Database Management, 56, made inappropriate comments about work-life balance being women's issues. Watch the room carefully as I continue. Some uncomfortable shifting, but nobody dares question my decisions. These dinosaurs were holding back innovation and creating toxic environments for our diverse workforce. Lean back in chair with confidence. I've documented extensive behavioral issues and performance concerns for each termination. Technically true, though the performance concerns were mostly about their resistance to my new collaborative initiatives, and the behavioral issues were really just them questioning my authority. CFO Sandra nods approvingly. Excellent work, Zoe. We need leaders who aren't afraid to make tough decisions. Feel that familiar rush of validation, finally someone who recognizes that cleaning house requires courage. Not my fault these men couldn't adapt to modern workplace expectations. Spend lunch break texting my friend Maya about the meeting. Just finished presenting my restructuring wins to leadership. Removed 3 more barriers to progress this quarter. The look on Bennett's face when I explained how much more collaborative our teams have become. Maya responds with fire emojis and, "You're literally changing corporate culture single-handedly." She gets it, unlike most people who don't understand what real equality looks like. Afternoon spent reviewing applications for the open positions, focusing on diverse candidates who bring fresh perspectives. Tired of seeing the same profile over and over, older white men with extensive experience. Experience doing what? Maintaining status quo? Creating boys' club atmospheres? Much rather hire hungry graduates who want to learn and grow. Promoted Jessica from junior analyst to senior systems role. She's 26, brilliant, and eager to prove herself. Sure, she doesn't have Robert's 15 years of experience, but experience can be overrated. Often, it just means set in old ways and resistant to innovation. Jessica brings energy and new ideas that this company desperately needed. Tuesday. Getting coffee in break room when I overhear 2 engineers talking. Don't understand why they let Robert go. He literally built half our infrastructure. Frank was the only one who knew the legacy network configurations. Roll my eyes at their dramatics. Typical male reaction to change. Immediately assume disaster without their precious, irreplaceable colleagues. Infrastructure can be rebuilt. Networks can be reconfigured. What matters is creating inclusive environments where everyone can thrive. Interrupt their conversation politely. You know, this could be a great opportunity to modernize those legacy systems. Sometimes we hold on to old processes just because they're familiar. They look at me like I suggested burning down the building. Zoe, those systems handle our entire production pipeline. Robert documented some of it, but most of the critical configurations were in his head. Shrug and smile. Then it's time we created proper documentation processes, isn't it? Spend Wednesday morning in meeting with IT discussing system transitions. Jessica looking overwhelmed as she tries to understand Robert's old responsibilities. His notes are really sparse, she admits quietly, and some of these servers, I'm not even sure what they do. Encourage her not to get bogged down in technical details. Focus on the bigger picture, Jessica. We can bring in consultants for the complex technical stuff. What matters is that you're approaching this with fresh eyes. Notice some tension in the room, but attribute it to normal resistance to change. People always get anxious when established routines get disrupted. Part of leadership is guiding teams through these transitions confidently. Can't let their fear hold back progress. Thursday afternoon, Bennett calls emergency meeting. Production floor supervisor Tom looking stressed. We've had 3 separate system failures since Monday. Quality control database went down Tuesday. Network routing issues yesterday that took 6 hours to resolve. This morning, the inventory management system started corrupting data. Maintain composure while internally rolling eyes. Convenient timing for these failures right after my personnel changes. These sound like technical issues that should be escalated to IT. Tom shakes his head frantically. That's just it, Zoe. Jessica's doing her best, but she doesn't know these systems. She's been calling the software vendors, but they keep asking for configuration details that only Robert knew. Resist urged to point out that this proves these systems needed better documentation anyway. Temporary growing pains are normal during transitions. Bennett looking concerned. How temporary are we talking here? Project confidence, I don't entirely feel. Give the team time to adjust. Sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette. Notice uncomfortable silence around the table. Clearly they don't appreciate the bigger picture of what we're accomplishing. Friday morning, more urgent messages. Production has ground to complete halt. Inventory system corruption means we can't track raw materials or finished products. Quality control database failure means we can't verify product standards. Network issues, preventing communication between facilities. Jessica in tears trying to coordinate with 3 different vendor support teams who keep asking for information nobody has. Start feeling first hints of genuine concern. Maybe the transition period is taking longer than expected, but that doesn't mean we made wrong decisions. It means we need to be more proactive about solutions. Call emergency meeting to discuss bringing in temporary consultants. Consultant team arrives Monday. Spend entire day just trying to understand current system architecture. Keep asking questions about tribal knowledge and undocumented processes. Apparently, Robert and Frank and David had built intricate workarounds and customizations over years. None of it properly recorded because they were too old school to embrace modern documentation standards. Tuesday consultant report makes my stomach drop. These systems are far more complex than initially apparent. Previous administrators implemented numerous custom solutions that require intimate knowledge of the specific business processes. Reverse engineering will take months, possibly longer. Estimated cost for full system restoration, $400,000 to $600,000. Timeline 6 to 8 months minimum. Bennett storming into my office Wednesday morning. Zoe, we need to talk. He's holding printouts of financial projections. We're looking at potential bankruptcy if we can't resume normal operations within 2 weeks. Our largest client is threatening to terminate their contract. We've got regulatory audits coming up that we can't complete without proper quality control systems. Try to project calm authority. Bennett, I understand this is a challenging transition period, but we can't let short-term difficulties undermine our long-term diversity and inclusion goals. Sometimes, transformative change requires temporary sacrifices. His face goes red. Temporary? Zoe, we might lose the entire company. Spend Wednesday night lying awake staring at ceiling, mind racing through possible solutions. Maybe we could rehire Robert and Frank and David. But what kind of message would that send? That we cave to pressure the moment things get difficult? That we admit our diversity initiatives were mistakes? Absolutely unacceptable from a principled standpoint. Thursday morning, Bennett calls another meeting, this time with the entire executive team. I've been doing some research into our recent HR decisions. Pulls out folder thick with documents. Zoe, I need you to walk me through the specific performance issues that led to these terminations. Feel defensive immediately. Bennett, as I explained before, there were documented behavioral and performance concerns. He opens the folder. According to these performance reviews, Robert had consistently excellent ratings for the past 5 years. Frank received a commendation last year for preventing a major security breach. David's database optimizations saved the company $50,000 in server costs. Scramble to maintain credibility. Performance reviews don't capture everything, Bennett. There were cultural fit issues, resistance to collaboration, microaggressions toward female colleagues. Technically all true, though perhaps interpreted more broadly than others might. Sometimes you have to read between the lines. Sandra, the CFO, speaks up. Zoe, did any of these men receive formal warnings or opportunities to address these behavioral issues? Feel heat rising in cheeks. Formal progressive discipline isn't always appropriate when dealing with embedded cultural problems. Sometimes, decisive action is necessary to protect vulnerable employees. Uncomfortable silence fills the room. Realize I might have overestimated leadership's commitment to real change. Clearly, they're more focused on short-term operational concerns than long-term cultural transformation. Friday afternoon, Jessica knocks on my office door. She looks exhausted and defeated. Zoe, I need to be honest with you. I don't think I can handle Robert's responsibilities. The vendors are saying we need someone with 10+ years of experience with these specific systems. They're recommending we try to get Robert back as a consultant. Feel like the walls are closing in. Jessica, I have confidence in your abilities. Don't let them intimidate you with their gatekeeping about experience. Fresh perspectives often solve problems that so-called experts miss. But even as I say it, the words feel hollow. Jessica just nods, sadly, and leaves. Weekends spent researching legal implications of our situation. If we can't fulfill contracts, we'll face massive penalties. If production doesn't resume soon, we'll have to lay off half the workforce. If regulatory audits fail, we could lose our operating licenses. Try calling Robert's number from HR files, but it goes straight to voicemail. Same with Frank and David. Monday morning, Bennett announces he's hired an external HR consulting firm to review our recent personnel decisions and recommend corrective actions. Feel like I've been punched in the stomach. This is basically a formal challenge to my authority and judgment. Bennett, I hope you're not suggesting that our diversity initiatives were somehow inappropriate. He won't meet my eyes. I'm suggesting we need to evaluate all our options. Tuesday, the external HR consultants start interviews, talking to remaining employees about workplace culture and recent changes. Overhear snippets of conversations that make my blood boil. Never had problems before these firings. Lost decades of institutional knowledge. Seemed like they were targeted for being older men. Realize some employees are trying to undermine our progress by framing legitimate personnel decisions as discrimination. Meet with the consulting team to provide my perspective. I think you'll find that the employees expressing concerns are struggling to adapt to a more inclusive workplace culture. Change is always difficult for people who benefited from previous systems. Lead consultant, woman named Patricia, takes notes silently. Was hoping for more solidarity from another woman in leadership. Instead, she asks pointed questions about documentation and formal processes. Did these employees receive written warnings about performance issues? Were there witnesses to the behavioral incidents you described? Did you follow the company's standard progressive discipline policy? Forced to admit that I prioritized swift action over bureaucratic procedures. Sometimes, formal processes can be used to protect problematic employees. I believed immediate intervention was necessary to prevent further harm to vulnerable staff members. Patricia continues, taking notes without expression. Wednesday afternoon, get call from company's legal counsel, Zoe. We need to discuss potential liability issues. If these terminated employees decide to file wrongful termination suits, we need to be prepared. Age discrimination claims can be very expensive to defend. Feel panic starting to creep in. These weren't age discrimination cases, they were performance and cultural fit issues. I documented everything properly. Legal counsel requests copies of all documentation, spend evening reviewing files and realizing how thin the evidence really is. Most of the performance issues were really disagreements about methodology. Most of the behavioral problems were instances of them questioning my authority or expressing skepticism about new policies, trying to present it in the best possible light, but feeling increasingly worried. Thursday morning, Jessica submits her resignation. I'm sorry, Zoe, but I'm in over my head. The stress is affecting my health and I don't want to be responsible when something catastrophic happens. Try to convince her to stay, but she's made up her mind. Now we don't even have someone attempting to handle Robert's responsibilities. Afternoon meeting with Bennett and the entire board of directors. Bennett presents consultant findings and financial projections. We're facing potential losses of $2 to $3 million if operations don't resume within the next 2 weeks. Legal counsel advises significant liability risk from recent terminations. External HR review suggests our personnel decisions may have violated federal anti-discrimination laws. Board member Elizabeth speaks up. Zoe, help us understand your decision-making process. What specific incidents led you to believe immediate termination was necessary for these employees? Repeat my explanations about cultural fit and collaborative resistance, but in this formal setting, with lawyers and board members taking notes, it all sounds much weaker. Board member Marcus asks the question I've been dreading. Did you consider that these employees might have valuable institutional knowledge? Was there any attempt to document their expertise before termination? Forced to admit that knowledge transfer wasn't prioritized. I believe that over-reliance on individual expertise was part of the systemic problem. Friday morning, Bennett calls me into his office alone. There are papers on his desk that look like legal documents. Zoe, the board has made a decision. We're going to attempt to rehire Robert, Frank, and David as emergency consultants. Whatever it takes to get operations running again. Feel like I'm watching my entire worldview crumble. Bennett, what kind of message does this send about our commitment to diversity and inclusion? He looks tired and defeated. Right now, Zoe, our commitment is to keeping this company afloat. We can worry about diversity initiatives after we're not facing bankruptcy. Want to argue, but realize I have no leverage left. The numbers don't lie. We're in crisis mode because of decisions I made. Spend weekend making phone calls to Robert, Frank, and David. Finally reach Robert on Sunday evening. Have to swallow every ounce of pride to ask for his help. Robert, I know our separation was difficult, but the company is facing some technical challenges and we could use your expertise on a consulting basis. Long pause before he responds. Zoe, I appreciate the call, but I've already accepted a position with a competitor. Funny thing is, they specifically recruited me because they heard about my experience with complex manufacturing systems. Feel my heart sink. Robert, please, we can offer the competitive consulting rates. The company really needs your help. Another pause. I'll be honest with you, Zoe. After the way I was treated, I have no interest in helping. You made it very clear that my experience and knowledge weren't valued. Now you want me to bail you out? That's rich. Call ends with him hanging up. Monday morning, similar conversations with Frank and David. Frank has already retired and moved to Florida. Spent 30 years building those network configurations, and you threw me out like garbage. Find someone else to fix your mess. David is polite but firm. I've started my own consulting business, and I'm fully booked for the next 6 months. Even if I had time, I'm not sure it would be a good fit. Tuesday, Bennett announces temporary plant closure. Can't risk shipping defective products without quality control systems. Can't fulfill orders without inventory management. Can't coordinate between facilities without network infrastructure. 120 employees sent home until further notice. Spend Tuesday afternoon in bathroom stall crying for the first time in years. Everything I worked for is falling apart. Diversity initiatives that were supposed to create a better workplace have led to people losing their jobs. Men I thought were obstacles to progress turn out to have been holding everything together. Wednesday meeting with legal counsel about wrongful termination exposure. Zoe, I'm going to be blunt. These cases are very difficult to defend. You have 3 men in a protected age category, all terminated within a short time frame. Your documentation focuses on subjective cultural issues rather than objective performance metrics. A jury is going to see a pattern of age and gender discrimination, feel physically sick as the implications sink in. What are our options? Settlement negotiations if they file suit. But given the company's current financial situation, even modest settlements could be problematic. Realize that my principled stand for equality might bankrupt the entire company. Thursday afternoon, first wrongful termination lawsuit arrives. Robert's attorney alleges age and gender discrimination, demands reinstatement, back pay, and punitive damages, includes detailed documentation of his 15-year performance history. His attorney has done homework, comprehensive record of his technical contributions and innovations. Friday morning, Frank's lawsuit arrives. Similar allegations, similar documentation. His attorney included testimony from other employees about his expertise and professionalism. Apparently several people were willing to provide character references. Realize that my perceptions of these men might not have been universally shared. Spend weekend reading through the lawsuits in detail, forced to confront possibility that my judgment was flawed. These documents paint picture of dedicated professionals who made genuine contributions. Maybe their resistance to my initiatives wasn't about sexism or outdated thinking. Maybe they had legitimate concerns about operational continuity. Monday morning, Bennett calls emergency board meeting. The situation has become untenable. We have pending lawsuits, operational shutdown, and potential bankruptcy. The board has asked me to explore all options for resolution. Dread fills my stomach as I realize what's coming. Zoe, we need to discuss your future with the company. Try to maintain dignity while everything collapses around me. Bennett, I understand that this transition period has been more challenging than anticipated, but I still believe that our diversity and inclusion goals are worth pursuing. Sometimes progress requires difficult sacrifices. Board members exchange glances that tell me everything I need to know. Board member Elizabeth speaks carefully. Zoe, we appreciate your passion for workplace equity. However, the board has concerns about the implementation of recent personnel decisions. We think it might be beneficial for you to take some time to reflect on alternative approaches. Corporate speak for, you're fired, but they're being diplomatic about it. Tuesday morning, cleaning out my office, boxing up awards and commendations from my years of HR work, diversity initiative materials and inclusion training programs I developed, photos from team building events and workplace culture celebrations. All of it feels hollow now. Jessica stops by to say goodbye. I'm sorry things worked out this way, Zoe. I know you were trying to make things better. Want to explain that my intentions were good, that change is always difficult, but can't find words that don't sound like excuses. Thanks, Jessica. I hope your next opportunity works out better. Wednesday, final meeting with legal counsel about personal liability. Zoe, you should be aware that the plaintiff's attorneys might pursue individual claims against you. Your role in the termination decisions could create personal exposure. You might want to consider retaining your own attorney. Feel the last vestiges of confidence drain away. Not only did I lose my job, but I might face personal lawsuits. Thursday afternoon, driving home from unemployment office, radio news mentions local manufacturing company facing closure due to operational difficulties. 120 employees losing their jobs because I thought I knew better. Families affected because I prioritized ideology over practical consequences. All those people who trusted me to make good decisions for the company. Friday evening, scrolling through LinkedIn, seeing updates from former colleagues. Some have already found new positions, others posting about the difficulty of job hunting in their 40s and 50s. Realized that my actions didn't just affect Robert, Frank, and David. Entire workforce paid the price for my mistakes. Lying in bed Friday night, finally forced to confront uncomfortable truths. Maybe experience and institutional knowledge actually matter. Maybe resistance to change isn't always about prejudice or outdated thinking. Maybe good intentions don't excuse poor judgment or harmful consequences. Maybe I was so focused on fighting perceived injustices that I created real ones. Saturday morning, Robert's interview in local business journal talks about his new position with competitor company. Sometimes when one door closes, another opens. I'm grateful for the opportunity to work with people who value experience and expertise. My former employer will figure things out eventually. These situations usually work themselves out. His grace and professionalism make me feel even worse. Sunday afternoon, final realization hits me like a punch to the gut. I became exactly what I thought I was fighting against. Used my position of power to discriminate against people based on demographics. Made assumptions about others' motivations and capabilities. Refused to listen to concerns or consider alternative perspectives. Prioritized my own ideological goals over fairness and company success. Monday morning, meeting with my own attorney about potential lawsuits. Zoe, your best strategy is probably to settle quietly and move on. Fighting these claims could be expensive and might generate negative publicity. Even if you ultimately win, the legal costs and career damage could be significant. Agreeing to settlements feels like admitting guilt, but fighting seems futile. Tuesday, calling Maya to explain what happened, expecting sympathy and support, but she sounds uncomfortable. Zoe, I have to ask, did you actually discriminate against those men? I mean, I support everything you were trying to accomplish, but maybe you moved too fast without thinking through the consequences. Realize that even my closest ally is questioning my judgment. Wednesday afternoon, job searching online. Every HR position requires references from recent supervisors. My recent supervisor just fired me for potentially illegal discrimination, trying to figure out how to explain this situation in interviews. How do you spin, I made personnel decisions that nearly bankrupted my company and led to multiple lawsuits? Thursday morning, news that the plant has permanently closed. Unable to recover from operational disruption and legal costs. All 120 employees officially laid off. Company assets being sold to pay creditors and legal settlements. Everything I thought I was protecting and improving is gone. Friday afternoon, final meeting with attorney about settlement agreements. Robert's attorney is asking for $150,000. Frank wants $125,000. David is demanding $100,000 plus legal fees. The company's insurance will cover most of it, but you'll need to contribute $50,000 personally. More money than I have in savings, meaning years of debt payments ahead. Saturday evening, looking through old photos from company events, images of diverse teams working together, collaboration between different generations. Realized that what I thought was exclusion and discrimination might have been normal workplace dynamics. Maybe Robert's mansplaining was actually mentoring. Maybe Frank's resistance was legitimate operational concerns. Maybe David's comments were practical observations, not microaggressions. Sunday morning, final, devastating realization. I destroyed everything I claimed to be protecting. Diverse team members lost their jobs because of my actions. Company that was starting to embrace inclusion policies is gone. Progress toward equality set back by my overreach and poor judgment. Women who might have benefited from gradual, sustainable changes lost that opportunity. Monday morning, writing settlement checks. $50,000 that represents years of my life and work. Money I was saving for a house, for the future, for security. Now going to compensate men whose lives I disrupted based on flawed assumptions. Signing papers that essentially admit I was wrong about everything. Tuesday, driving past the closed plant for the last time. Empty parking lot where 120 cars used to be. Security fence around buildings that used to hum with activity. Sign announcing the property is for sale. Monument to my failure to understand the difference between justice and revenge. Wednesday evening, finally admitting the truth to myself. I wasn't fighting for equality or justice. I was exercising power over people I disliked and disagreed with. Used social justice language to justify personal vendettas. Convinced myself that my biases were moral principles. Became exactly the kind of person I thought I was opposing. Thursday night, staring at my empty office supplies and career mementos. Boxes of materials from a career that's effectively over. Reputation in ruins, savings depleted, legal liability hanging over me. But worst of all, knowledge that real people suffered because of my arrogance. Families disrupted, careers derailed, company destroyed, community damaged. Friday morning, Robert's final quote in the Business Journal follow-up story. I don't hold grudges. People make mistakes, and hopefully they learn from them. The real tragedy is that this situation was completely avoidable. If there had been honest communication and respect for different perspectives, we could have found solutions that worked for everyone. Instead, ideology trumped practicality, and everybody lost. Sitting in my empty apartment Friday night, unemployed, facing years of debt payments, reputation destroyed, trying to understand how someone who genuinely wanted to make the world better could cause so much harm. Realizing that good intentions without wisdom, humility, and practical judgment are not just useless. They're dangerous. The worst part isn't my personal consequences. It's knowing that 120 innocent people lost their jobs. That Robert, Frank, and David had their careers disrupted for no good reason. That the cause of workplace equality has been set back by my extremism. That I became living proof of every stereotype about militant feminists. Sunday evening, final entry in this mental catalogue of failure. Used to believe that being passionate about justice made me a good person. Now understand that passion without judgment is destructive. Good intentions without competence hurt innocent people. Moral certainty without humility leads to exactly the kind of abuse I thought I was fighting. The man I thought I was outsmarting, Bennett, Robert, Frank, David, even the legal system, they didn't need to be clever or manipulative to defeat me. They just needed to be right. And I was wrong about everything that mattered.